But he wasn't actually doing anything particularly unpleasant to you. He was asking a polite question.
He was pursuing me as long as... Well, actually...
He asked, you know, was it a good party again?
In every year that I was mayor, the Evening Standard never had anyone outside photographing people coming in and out of reception. We have a reception for somebody, for mainly homosexuals. They're taking pictures. I resented that.
It was a reception for Chris Smith, who was very happy to welcome the Evening Standard.
But I'm not.
There.
I mean,
okay.
He's more tolerant of reporters than I am. I've a life of abuse from reporters who've lied, who've intruded in my private life, and I'm going to tell you what I think of you all. I think there are some heroic reporters who put their lives on the line. Others are the scum of the earth.
Okay. Is this a manifestation of your temper? I mean, some people say one of the problems with you as a politician is you've got a bit of a temper sometimes.
I suppose I lose my temper about twice a year. I didn't lose my temper. If you look at the pictures the Standard took of me coming out, I'm actually smiling. It's only after the character continues to pursue me along the street I give him a mouthful.
And it was also said that you'd been drinking at the time. Is that a problem? And again, that was something that came up in the election campaign, that your fondness for drink.
It was a smear by Martin Bright, who was basically a bit of an Islamophobe, who was throwing all these charges around.
Okay. You described Martin Bright just then, the journalist, as an Islamophobe. I mean, are you too eager to call people Islamophobes? I'm thinking of the apology and the damages you had to pay to your former colleague Michael Keith last month.
Michael Keith isn't a colleague of mine.
You did call him, and you called him, and well, he's a fellow member of the Labour Party, who you called an Islamophobe.
Well, we'll see on Thursday whether the people of Town agree with him or me.
But I think you accepted you were wrong to call him an Islamophobe. You
I'm not
damages
discussing a legal case without my lawyer present.
You did apologise to him, and paid him damages.
I've had 40 years of incredible abuse. I could have spent my life suing journalists and newspapers. I don't, because I think it's... I mean, I view if you're in public life, you should take credit. The things you've said about me, I've never sued you. The simple reality is it's a total waste of time to be involved in the courts and libel. The voters are a better jury. They'll decide whether they think it's right or wrong.
OK, but my question is, are you too ready to call people Islamophobes? You seem to have accepted that you were in that particular case. You've apologised to Mr. Keith.
No, I'm not. I mean, I think Islamophobia is massively on the rise, right the way across Europe and America. You go on these American websites, you read these alarming things from the far right that Europe's being taken over by Muslims. Benny Morris, the very respected Jewish scholar, wrote that we're like ancient Rome. We've allowed the barbarians in. We'll be destroyed from inside. There'll be a nuclear war.
Nobody disputes that there is Islamophobia in the world, Ken. But my question is whether you're applying the term in too blanket a way against anyone who happens to disagree with you or with a particular variety of radical Islam that you...
No, it's those people who've taken it up as an issue. And there's a layer of people like Martin Bright, and I put yourself in this category, who, I mean, perhaps you only do it because you write for the Telegraph. But you go onto your website, so much of it is about dangerous Islam and fundamentalist Islam. That isn't a threat here.
No, Islamism Muslims is distinct from Islam.
Muslims who've come to Britain have come because they want to be part of our life, share our values, participate. And it's very easy for the Telegraph, the Express, the Mail to go on about Muslims as they used to go on about blacks, and they went on about the Irish and went on about Jews. For the parties of the right and the papers of the right, the newcomer is always a threat. I don't know who it will be in 20 years.
I mean, to take directly what you said about the journalism I'd done, I mean, the fact is that the vast majority of critics of the Islamic Forum of Europe, in that case in the programme that I did, were themselves Muslim. Yes. And it wasn't an attack on Islam, it was an attack on a particularly small sect of Islam, which claims to speak for the whole faith.
I mean, if you go down to the East London Mosque, has a mass following.
But it doesn't represent more than a few % of the overall population of Islam, which is hugely complicated and complex.
But see, I've been working with them for years. I mean, Boris Johnson works with them. Prince of Wales works with them. Either we're all particular idiots being used by evil forces of Islam.
Is that what you are? I mean, they say different things.
I saw your programme.
They say different things to you, and they say different things to themselves. And we've got their internal transcripts, we've got their internal documents that show they think very differently. They want to overthrow Western-style democracy.
Somebody who is a fundamentalist Muslim is not going to be prepared to work with me, an atheist, a promoter of homosexual tolerance. I'm everything they would loathe and abhor.
That's actually part of the core doctrine of Islamism. Is called entryism. Is something you'll be familiar with from the left. Is that they enter into conventional democratic political parties and take them over. That's there in Maududi.
Well, that is not how. I mean, the Prophet swept, and his sons and followers swept across the world and conquered it by force and created what was the most advanced civilization at the time.
Nobody's suggesting any of these people are violent, Ken, but what we are suggesting is that they don't tell the truth about their true views, and that nor do they represent the whole of the massively diverse and liberal faith
they
of
don't claim
Islam.
to. But I watched your programme, and what I saw, I mean, everybody in one faction of the Labour Party was on your programme slagging off the East London Mosque.
Hardly any of them were members of the Labour Party.
They are all they're all part of a faction around my older enemy, Michael Keith. And this is the issue. What down there separates the East London Mosque and the Brick Lane Mosque are the question of their relationship to the Labour Party and local centres of power. Right. It's not an issue of the interpretation of Islam.
All right. Why have you been relatively invisible in this election campaign? I mean, we've seen quite a lot of Boris. I didn't see you at Labour's London campaign launch. Why is that?
Well, basically, I'm just an unemployed pensioner. I go around and help out all over the place. And I've gone all over marginal seats.
OK, but why isn't Labour using you more in the election campaign if you're this vote-grabbing machine that you think you are?
Well, I'm being used pretty extensively. And you've got to put that question to them. If they'd asked me to come along, I'd come along. You know me, I'm promiscuous.
OK. Are you definitely going to be mayor in 2012?
Well, that's up to Londoners to decide.
I mean, you know, Boris is absolutely gasping for you to be his opponent. He does think he can beat you again.
I believe that.
But I mean, that is genuinely what his people believe.
There's only been one opinion poll since the mayoral
election. Which shows that the lead he had of 6 points widened to 16 points if the election was rerun.
But it still showed I was running 13 points ahead of the Labour Party.
It showed that a different candidate could beat Boris, but you couldn't.
You didn't run as alternative range.
We ran Alan Sugar, for instance. We ran a couple of other names. He could beat Boris.
Yeah,
that's
and
what
Peter
the polls said.
Stringfellow always says he's saying. I mean, the simple fact is this: if somebody wants to be the Labour candidate for mayor, they need to overcome me in the nomination. If they can't overcome me for the Labour nomination, they won't overcome Boris. Boris is a formidable opponent. Even if there's a Tory government and it's deeply unpopular, what we saw at the last election, a lot of Londoners will vote for the person, for or against, and it's up to Londoners. I'm quite eager to take on Boris, but if somebody can make a better case to the Labour members that they'd be a stronger candidate, they'll win.
There'll be quite a lot of people looking in the Labour Party, perhaps looking for interesting work after this election, do you think?
Well, we'll see how badly it goes on Thursday, but there may not be as many as some of the papers are predicting. OK, Ken Livingstone, that is all we've got time for. Thank you very much indeed for coming in. Until next time, I'm Andrew Gilligan, and you've been watching Face to Face. Goodbye.